$22 million. That's up from $831 million for the same quarter last year. Wisconsin Governor Scott Walker says his state could send layoff notices to state workers as soon as next week. Walker says the state would have to send the notices if a budget impasse is not resolved. Walker says he won't back off his proposal to curtail collective bargaining rights for most public employees. Hundreds of University of Minnesota students are expected to take part in a rally at the state capitol today. The students say they'll ask lawmakers to protect the U of M from funding cuts as the legislature considers ways to fix the state's budget deficit of more than $6 billion. The new rally is being organized by the U's Minnesota Student Association. Nick Saab is the group's director of legislative affairs.
These cuts in funding are not acceptable, and the administration can trim their budgets all they want, but we've seen a decrease in funding over the past years that it doesn't bode well for the future.
Governor Mark Dayton's proposed budget reduces funding to the U of M and the Minnesota State colleges and universities system by 6% over the next 2 years, but college officials fear they will face deeper cuts later in the session. Partly sunny skies across Minnesota today, high temperatures in the 20s. Right now it's 11 between cities. This is Minnesota Public Radio News.
For the first time in more than 2 decades, voters in Chicago are going to the polls today to select a mayor who is not named Richard Daley. Daley is not seeking a record 7th term. In fact, Daley and his father, with only one interruption, have ruled the city since the 1950s. Now, former White House Chief of Staff Rahm Emanuel is the favorite in today's election, but his rivals predict there will be no clear-cut winner and that a runoff is likely. NPR's Cheryl Corley reports.
Here's what all the candidates running for mayor of Chicago want to do today. Get 50% plus one more vote. That's what it will take to claim outright victory. So, during the last full day of campaigning, the candidates crisscrossed the city. Rahm Emanuel started at a familiar place, one of the city's elevated train stations.
It's either 109 or 110 L stops since we started.
While the L train rumbled overhead, Emanuel shook hands, posed for pictures, and continued to talk about changes he says are needed to get the city's dismal economy in shape. The latest poll shows him that 49% of his supporters likely voters, so he cautiously avoids making predictions.
That's their decision on the election. My goal is to make sure that they know I've been honest about what the challenges are, honest about what the policy choices are.
Emanuel won a court fight seeking to knock him off the ballot based on his residency. He's raised millions of dollars, dominating the airwaves with commercials. One features President Barack Obama praising Emanuel, and at the L stop, Latrice Jarvis says that's good enough for her. If Obama backs him, I'm a backer. But Emanuel wasn't the only candidate wooing commuters. Traveling from stop to stop on the L, former school board chief Jerry Chico had a message too.
Draw your polls away.
And in a city where machine politics and get-out-the-vote efforts are the stuff of legend, Chico, who is a distant second in the polls, says his organization is ready to go.
We're hoping to have a couple thousand people working on the streets, in the precincts, getting their voters out. We've already done quite a bit of work on phone banking.
A former chief of staff to Mayor Daley, Chico calls himself a guy from Chicago's neighborhood.
Ron grew up in suburban safety and privilege. Maybe that's why Ron has a plan that hits our working...
Political analyst and Chicago Sun-Times columnist Laura Washington says the candidates scrambling to fight for another day have put a dent in the expectation that Emanuel will run away with the election.
No one's really been able to lay a glove on him in any meaningful way.
Doesn't mean they don't continue to try. Carol Rosenbaum made history when she became the first black female to win election to the U.S. Senate. Her chanting supporters hope that on this date, the same day that Harold Washington won the Democratic mayoral primary 28 years ago, that Braun will again make history. She took aim at millionaires Emanuel and Chico, saying she had never used her office for personal gain. supported by McPhail Center for Music, offers early childhood music classes from age 6 weeks and up. McPhail teachers combine education and fun to instill and nurture a lifelong love of music. Class